Chair Kelly, we do have a simple majority present in combination online and in person. You may call the meeting to order when you're ready.
All right, in the interest of everybody's time, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order and be officially underway today. Let's see, I guess we need to start with the roll call, please.
Yes, Chair Kelly. Present. Bill Day. Bob Zapata. Adelita Gandu. Raquel Zapata. Vanessa Alvarado. Steve Bonet. Amber Tafsado. Cliff Soloway. Frank Gonzalez. Diana Martinez. Lawson Picasso. Thomas Corser.
Here.
And Richard Farias.
All right, we do have enough of a quorum to get started, so we welcome everybody to our meeting. At this point, we'll ask the staff to do the invocation and pledge of allegiance, please.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. And before I do, I just want to know Aaron Stein is also online. Thank you. All right, everyone.
I missed you, Aaron.
It's all right. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure we caught that for the record. If you all will just join me for this momentary invocation. We thank you for the many blessings you have freely given each of us. We ask for your presence to guide this meeting of the CPS Energy Citizens Advisory Committee. Provide them with the knowledge, compassion, and wise counsel needed as they discuss the business matters on the agenda today. Help us all to remember that we are stewards acting on behalf of our customers and provide us with the grace to serve all people well. We ask this in your name. Amen. All right. If you will all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Chair Kelly, before we move into any further down the agenda, I would like to, introduce to the committee our President and CEO, Mr. Rudy Garza. We are very fortunate for his schedule to allow for him to come and speak with you all for just a little bit. So Rudy, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you.
I guess for the folks on the line, I need to use the microphone. I like to not use the microphone when I can help it. I am not going to take up much of your time, and I apologize. It's been a few meetings since I've been. A lot going on right now, obviously, with respect to, a lot of things. And I'm just going to give you a quick kind of, update on where we are as an organization. We had a really heck of a summer run season. Our power plants ran well. Our power generation folks, our wires folks did their jobs this summer. Our plants ran when the market opportunity was there, which allowed us to help the state, quite frankly, keep the lights on. And my number one job, reliability. My number two job is keep rates affordable to the extent possible. And my number three job is to innovate and lead us into the future, all of which our Vision 2027 strategy, helps us accomplish. But we really did have an outstanding summer. You'll start to see you've already seen some conversation over at City Hall about the revenues that, that above and beyond what they were expecting, that really, they've been able to do some good things with. The revenue, last summer was different. Last summer, we didn't have a great wholesale revenue year. We actually were 50% of plan last year because the market conditions just were different this summer. And we had some issues with our power plants, quite frankly. This summer, our power plants ran when the market opportunity was there. And so, that allowed us to do our thing and bring in some wholesale revenues. So just a tale of two summers. It doesn't happen without our employees doing their jobs, and I'm really proud of the work our folks did. We saw kind of year over year in August, about $80 million of wholesale revenues realized that really is a great thing for our community. It allows us to buy down debt, allows us to, to cover some budgetary overages that we saw as a result of trying to keep the plants running. If they run more, you got to run more fuel through them. So there's all kinds of reasons why, our budget goes up when we have market opportunities like this. And it also creates a weird dynamic because we're about to start a conversation about a potential rate increase, which we talked about 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, we said we need, here are the numbers we know, we need these things, we need the money for these things. And it brought in roughly $74 million in new revenue that allowed us to pay for our people strategy, to start the work on our technology upgrades, to pay for growth, and to start the planning work for our generation plan. Well, this year, we'll go back in. The conversation will start this week with our ad hoc committee that we put together. A lot of, some of you all, we asked to serve on that committee, and we'll begin that conversation, this Thursday with the community. But, it'll create kind of a weird dynamic. It's kind of hard. And what I'm trying to express to the board and council members and people that we need to talk to about this, just don't penalize us because we did a good job this summer, right? That's what we are supposed to do, but it doesn't offset the need for, a long-term increase in revenue to pay for the capital, additional capital items that we're going to have to pay for to do two things. We are transforming this utility as part of our Vision 2027 strategy. We are transforming this utility, into the future in an industry that does not like change. We're leading, and that's what the community has told us they expect out of us. So, and we are doing the things that we need to do to comply with our climate action and adaptation plan. So if you want a transformative utility and you want to do something about climate change, then what we are about to ask for accomplishes both of those items as part of our Vision 2027 strategy. So, so I feel like we've got a good story. We've worked collaboratively with our owner. We're not adding anything new into the bucket, things that we need dollars for that will create confusion. It's never an easy conversation, but it should be a much more, a much simpler conversation in terms of it's just really a continuation of the last conversation 2 years ago, and I don't relish being the CEO that has to ask for multiple rate increases, but we're still the lowest residential rate in the state. And even with the rate increase, we will still be the lowest residential rate in the state. So there's value there for our customers to ensure that we're making the investments we need to make, into the future. If we don't ask for it now, or we don't get what we need now, all that means is 2 years from now, when we'll be back again, we're going to be asking for a bigger rate increase. And so we can layer these requests in a reasonable manner, or we can hit you with a big one. And neither one of them are going to be easy. Right. But it's my job when, you see the need there to proceed, and we're ready, to do that. And our Vision 2027 strategy, what I'd say about that is a strategy without a resource plan to accomplish it isn't worth the paper it's written on. So if we're, and so our Vision 2027 strategy really was a culmination of all the conversations we've been having with the community about what they expect out of us. That's what we're trying to give, to our community. If we don't build power plants to replace the old stuff, we're buying power on the market at whatever price it costs us, and it exposes our customers to risk. The one thing the business community asks me every day, Rudy, do we have enough power for the next 25 years? No. And even with our strategy, we won't have enough power for the next 25 years. All we're trying to do is keep up with growth. But at some point, these old plants get more and more expensive every year, which cuts more and more into the dollars we do have to work with. So they're going to have to be shut down at some point. And if we don't have new plants to replace them with, then you're taking on risks that we've just never taken on, as a company. So we got a plan that will get us there. That plan needs resources applied to it to make it go. And that's kind of where we are as an organization. I'll tell you, we're in a much different place looking back 2 years that I've been in this role now, going back to when they asked me to step in as interim than we were when I took over. Things are quiet. Our folks are focused on doing their jobs. We got the people we need to get the job done, we're listening in a way that I think is different. And I think that's got us some of the trust we had lost back, rather quickly, actually. It's happened quicker than maybe I thought it would originally. But we still got work to do. So I'm going to stop there. That's kind of the fall. That's what the fall view looks like for us. We got a lot of community input together, a lot of meetings ahead of us, but I feel good about our plan. And, right now I think the community is willing to at least listen. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions. Sure, Bob. And anybody online, if there are any questions online, we'll go to you just here in a second.
I don't mean to put you in an uncomfortable position,
Yeah.
but can you speak to anything about the South Texas nuclear plant and whether that would help alleviate some of the constraints in the future, maybe?
Yes. So, our community summarily rejected the idea of building STP 3 and 4. So, they're not a executive who proposed that, 10 years ago that's left. So I doubt, I'm bearish on the idea that you're going to build 2 big nuclear units. I do think we can get more nuclear capacity, and we're kind of working on an option to get some additional capacity of what's there right now. And I do think there's opportunities. In fact, I've got 2 executives, or maybe 3 executives right now out in Oregon, looking at some small modular nuclear technology. So I do think and those are like 40, 50 megawatt units. We can string, some of those together and still get some more nuclear capacity that we need. And in today's market, the quick start stuff is where the value is. It's, because of all the solar and wind that's in the market, which is good and keeps our rates low. When you have those quick start units that you can use to cover, the 7 to 9 o'clock PM peak when solar starts ramping down, really, really valuable in this market. So we're going to be looking at peaker technology probably as a baseline for the next 5 years, I think. Yeah. But small modular nuclear absolutely is part of our equation. Yeah, and we just got our principal nuclear officer onto a PUC committee that came out of the last legislative session, where we will be a direct part of the statewide conversation on nuclear. So, if you're going to build big nuclear units in the future, it's going to have to be behind state or federal backing. It's the only way. That's the way France and some of the other countries around the world are doing it. It's just too expensive for one utility to take on their own. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I've never used it, sorry. So my question is on I'm going to be meeting with my councilman later today. So he's going to ask questions, and I've already given certain updates as far as why the reason for the rate increase, such as weatherization and updating, modernizing the system and
Right.
some of the utilities. But one of the things you mentioned on there, because one of the concerns is the exploding growth. So many new apartment buildings, subdivisions being built, and those new alerts about consumption of energy to kind of decrease.
Yeah.
So I guess that is very nifty, because I think it raises awareness to people who may not realize there's an issue. But in addition to that, one of the things which, according to the podcast interview you had in September, the Spruce plant is going to be converted to a natural gas
Yes.
facility as a backup plan, I guess. And in the meantime, are we covered for the upcoming winter?
I think we're covered from our loads perspective. So we have a little over 6,000 megawatts of what you would call dispatchable generation. Our winter peak last winter was about 5,200. So we are covered from our perspective. Again, if the entire state is under freezing temperatures, that's where I think the scenario is where the rest of the state might see some issues. You know, when gas wells out in West Texas start freezing up, it creates a challenge for all generators in the state, which we pay a lot of attention to. So yes, but when I say, you know, my message that is not always a popular message, but it's what I believe. We got to have every megawatt we can get onto the system right now, no matter wind, solar, you know, battery storage, whatever it is, every megawatt helps deal with growth. You know, we need more dispatchable, but that's a 4 or 5 year planning horizon. You're not going to get 10,000 megawatts of dispatchable generation overnight. That's why conservation is so important. Every time we hit that button and send that message out to our customers respond. San Antonio has a much more robust overall, you know, conservation, conservation muscle, if you will. Our customers, both residential and commercial, respond every time. We hit them 22 times or something like that this past summer, and every time they showed up. So when you don't have the resource capacity to turn on when it gets hot or really cold, the only other button you have to push is conservation. And if we get the response that we need, which we do every time, that means we can avoid a rolling outage situation, which we know is real painful, for our community. So I think we're doing a really good job there. Thank you. Tom, good to see you.
Thanks. Hey, I heard what you said about, do we have enough power generation capacity? Answer's no for our future.
Long term,
right? I get it. What about, I'm thinking business customers, right?
Yeah.
As a resident, I think you're going to come through for us, right? I get that. But business customers that are looking to relocate here or expand here in a significant way, how are they feeling? How do they look at CPS? What's their lens look like?
Well, they're coming here not because we're the cheapest. If you're a commercial customer, you can probably get a cheaper rate in the competitive market. That's just the reality of it. But we're not so out of the market that we're uneconomical. We're competitive. We're just not the cheapest on the commercial side. What we are, which is why data centers are coming here, is we're one of the most reliable utilities in the country. Data centers cannot be out. We're willing to work with them on backup generation. And quite frankly, the big customers are probably going to have to bring their own generation to the table. So during those 2 hours where it gets really tight, then go off system onto their own generation and alleviate the pressure on the grid. So, which is exactly what we're doing. The situation we have with SAWS where they're working on, a backup generation plan, we got that going on all over the community, with really large customers. And so for us, that's as good as us building our own generation. If a customer can give us, can give us some relief during those couple of hours in the hot summer day in the evening when things get tight as solar ramps down, then you know what? I mean, there's a lot of value there. And so here's the thing. The rest of the state ain't any better off than we are. In fact, we're ahead of the game when it comes to our planning for what our needs are going to be. So when I'm sitting across the table from somebody that could pick San Antonio versus Dallas or Houston, my message is we got you.
So my question was more, I think that's great context, but
Yeah.
more about capacity.
Well, again, we've got over the next 5 to 8 years, 2,500 megawatts of capacity is going to come offline, and we got plans to put 3,500 megawatts of capacity online. Okay, so the net is over 1,000 megawatts of new generation, which will help us keep up with growth.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Rudy, I guess I would
Yep.
just pose a question, or make a comment. I think that as a municipal utility, we've got some flexibility that sometimes the competitive guys in Dallas and Houston don't have. I think it's certainly better for our community, for our ratepayers here in our community. But I think one thing that I would certainly like to see us maintain is the ability to produce as much as we need and maybe a little extra cushion with our generation capacity. I know that that may sometimes cost us a little bit, but it sure gives us a lot better feeling of security if we know we've got enough to cover our needs.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, John. I am in agreement with you on that. But I don't want to be the CEO that builds another spruce that we're having to retire early 15 years from now. So I'd rather take iterative steps to create the capacity that we need. Solar, batteries, all good stuff that we can leverage in the market that are going to be in the money over the long term. But man, I'm trying to hold off on building that natural gas plant, that's $1 billion investment as long as I can, until I have no other choice, right? And so that's kind of where my head is. Yeah. Anybody online have any thoughts before I shut her down? I'm getting the hook here by Yvonne, so she runs a tight ship. All right. Well, anybody that had a question that didn't get an answer, just shoot us an email and we'll get you an answer. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate all you do.
One little quick
Yes, sir.
comment. The people from the staff, the folks that work with you, have uniformly impressed us with the quality of their abilities and their expertise. They are great. We've got a great group of people here.
Well, that's why they feed you good lunch so that you think highly of them. But they do great work. Absolutely. I have all the confidence, the same confidence that you have. I have even more because they do a good job for us. So thank you. I think Geronimo is going to give you a good presentation about our financial picture that I think y'all will enjoy. So appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Let's see next journey. Thank you. All right. So Chair Kelly, why don't we go ahead? I'll defer my staff update to just before your roundtable. Why don't we go ahead and move to the approval of the minutes and then we will bring up our presenter.
Okay, so entertain any comments on the minutes for the last meeting? Okay, Bob?
Gentlemen, yours advised CPS Energy staff. I think the question was not just utilities, about transmission. Well, it's all this. That was, it started as a transmission discussion.
Okay. All right, so, right, okay, so we'll just add a little bit more verbiage there to include the transmission concern. And I think if I recall, that was from the South Texas area into the remainder of the state.
Okay.
I think there was that issue that was discussed. Okay, Bob. Anybody else have any amendments to the minute?
That amendment, I move approval.
Okay. Second, anybody got a second? Okay. Thank you.
Move approval with that change that was spoken about.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Aye.
Good. Okay, good. So the minutes are approved with the modification and we will move now to the financial briefing.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. We will work on that modification to the minutes. So we will go ahead and transition now to Mr. Geronimo Gonzalez. He has been with CPS Energy, how long? About 7 years now? My memory's good every once in a while. And he's covered a wide range of functions in our financial services area. And so he's going to provide a briefing on our multi-year financial strategy. A lot of the content that is in this briefing was also shared with our Board of Trustees at their regular meeting back on September the 25th. And I felt that bringing forth this content with a little bit of additional, context and background for all of you is going to be really helpful, being that we are contemplating a journey ahead later on this year, for a rate request. So we wanted to continue to lay down that foundation of helpful information. So Geronimo, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so good afternoon, almost afternoon. As Yvonne said, my name is Geronimo Gonzalez. Just a little bit about myself. I'm from San Antonio, grew up here, went to John Jay High School down in Marbach, UTSA, and been with the company for 7 years. So I've done financial forecasting, I've led the debt management team, and now I lead the budget team here at CPS Energy. I was also part of the team that led the last rate case. So so I have some good information on that. Okay, so really the objective today is to re-anchor us to the multi-year financial strategy that really we laid out in our 2023 rate request. I want to highlight or focus on some of the elements of that strategy in motion that you might be seeing here in the next few months. And we'll talk about the mission vision 2027. We'll connect it to our multi-year plan, kind of link it to some high investment period initiatives that we're looking at, and then kind of go through some of the process that you can be expecting over the next several months, few months. Well, I can't do a better job than our biggest advocate, Rudy. He kind of touched on this slide. Vision 2027, collection of feedback from the community, kind of translated into particular actions and outcomes that we want to see for the community and the city of San Antonio. I think the main takeaway here is that Vision 2027 is in flight. We're there now, where we might have been the last rate case really putting the finishing touches on this. We are there now, actually executing on this Vision 2027. So our focus is tight. It's focused on operations. It's focused on customers, on community, on hiring the right team to kind of lead those initiatives, and then really underpinning it with the strong financials. And so the multi-year financial strategy is really going to help enable that. A core tenet of that multi-year financial strategy is our rate plan. We set this forth. Kind of the first table there on the top in blue kind of represents what we said in our 2023 rate request. We said we'd be coming roughly every couple of years, a little bit more regular, in order to enable Vision 2027. So that's kind of the same point. We're sticking to that strategy, and we're looking to implement that. Two, the presentation is not really going to be a discussion on an exact number. You'll see some ranges on here that our team is thinking through, but we're still in the process of validating that number, and look to bring something with a little bit more definition later this month or early next month. So this chart here is really goes back to 1975. So it's a journey to 1975. And I may or may not have been like -7 in 1975. But I think it's very good history to look at in two perspectives. CPS Energy has always been making investments on behalf of the community. And two, the community has always been supporting CPS Energy throughout our existence. I think this lays it out well. The orange bars going up are capital investments. So this is our bucket trucks, our lines, our infrastructure investment. The yellow stars are where we've come with a rate request to the community. I think it's interesting. You can see the parallels that as San Antonio grows, and CPS grows as well. So it's inevitably that CPS and the community and San Antonio are linked. You'll notice also that we've been in periods of high investment throughout this cycle. Early 80s, we had high investment periods, early 2000s, and then you'll see in the green bars going forward, that's our future year investment that we're planning. Our future years is very similar, very generation related. What we have in the forward years that we've talked about, the last rate case, we've talked about now, Rudy just talked about it when he was speaking with y'all, is technology upgrades. So this is, we've really squeezed out everything that we could from the system that we have, and we're looking to replace that. And it'll provide benefits for our customers, and our community as well. This slide is where you can start making the linkages, whereas the last slide was historical. This is really trying to start to connect the dots on the here and now. How does that Vision 2027 translate into actual requirements, outcomes, the business case that we're going to bring forward on what we'd be using these investment dollars for? As Rudy mentioned, the story really hasn't changed. We're still making heavy investments in our infrastructure resiliency, making sure that the power stays on, and when it does go out, we can bring it on back on quickly. You'll see technology and security. This is underpinning, again, our system that we've squeezed every last life out of. Will help us with, bring forward new products, new services, tailored services, and really help provide faster service. We talked a lot about our people. The last rate case was also about investing in our people. We continue to do that to make sure we attract the right people and retain the right people. And then we talked about growth. There's going to be a continued growth in San Antonio via our projections. And like you saw in that slide from 1975, as San Antonio is growing, as the customer base is growing, the investments that we are obligated for the customer to do also grow. So this slide is more for awareness. This is going to be a decade-plus journey, and there are things that we're keeping, that we're monitoring in our side mirrors that will have an impact on our plan. I think as we roll out our plan later on in the fall, you'll be able to see how we address certain elements of these what are labeled current threats, but they're really influencers of our plan. You'll be able to see how we're addressing aging infrastructure, digital transformation, and others. And it's not necessarily a static view. We make assumptions on it in our plan for the conditions today, but as these change throughout the decade of investment, there are items that we're keeping our a really close beat on to pivot and prioritize as we go forward. Well, I mean, these aren't prioritized in any order. I think we're keeping I think our risk program, we kind of went through consolidating our risk into enterprise risks. So I think we're kind of keeping a wide lens would be my simple answer on that. All of these on here, you'll see we address in the plan. So I guess if that answers your question. Okay, so revenue requirement, and this is a slide where you can get very financial and geeky, but I'm not going to do that. Steps 1 and 2 that you see on there, that's very much like a kitchen table conversation that you'll have with your family on finances. It's how much money are we bringing in and how much money do we need to spend in order to achieve the accomplishments of the family. That's very much what we're doing. We call it revenue forecasting. That's the money that's coming in. Revenue requirements is the money that's going out. Wherever the revenue that's coming in or does not, or the revenue requirements that's going out exceeds the revenue that's coming in, we have an obligation. We have an obligation to seek additional funding in order to enable the investments that you saw on the prior slide that link to the Vision 2027 outcomes and the continued growth and reliability for San Antonio. Bullets 3, 4, and 5, those are kind of the making the business case bullets. We're going to go to certain areas, stakeholder groups to make our case. Currently, we're on step 3. So our next line will be going to the Board of Trustees and our regulator, City of San Antonio. You'll see number 4 there is stakeholder input. That's inclusive of this body, the public and working groups that will kick off this week, and then a strategy of customer engagement that we've gotten very, very efficient and very good at as we've made some big level decisions here the last 2 years. And then finally culminating with the board and city approval of the rate request. A little bit about the ad hoc committee. Again, this is one of the layers of getting community feedback. It kicks off this week on the 12th with the first meeting. Those meetings will be live streamed. As you're reaching out into your areas of influence, I would recommend letting people know to plug in. This would be a really good opportunity to get involved, to try to understand what's the latest information as we roll out this business case. So talking to the community, you've heard from Rudy, is vital. We've had a lot of success in the last 2 years of doing this. As we were having conversations with our STEP program, as we were having conversations on our power gen portfolio discussion, we leveraged a multitude of avenues to talk to our community and get their feedback. This here doesn't have necessarily dates, but it does kind of sequence how those conversations will occur. So it's less so specific on dates. That will be filled out here in the coming weeks, where you'll have particular milestones and dates of engagement. Starts with the Board of Trustees. You see that in the top row. The Community Working Group, which again kicks off this week. You'll see yourselves there, the Citizen Advisory Committee, where we're at today, and then how you'll be kept informed throughout the process. This green bar is the community outreach. So there's numerous events, surveys, different engagements that we've utilized successfully here in the past that we'll continue to do. And then finally, multiple touch points with the city council. So I think, let me foot stomp one. We're still validating the numbers, the financial strategy that we set forth in the 2023 rate request, where we become in multiple, every other couple of years, is still in play, and we're still executing on that. We're validating the numbers. The kitchen table conversation is still happening. And two, we can promise that there's more to come. There's going to be more to come as we get closer to the end of the month, early into next month, and we look to keep everybody informed and solicit feedback as we're having this communication and rolling out the business case. A few ways that you can get involved, again, through our different groups and governance, but also through their websites. A lot of the communications that we have are live streamed. You can follow us on our social media presence on various platforms. And then in particular, the CPS Energy public input .com can keep you up to date on different engagements, different surveys, so you can stay connected with the process at large. So in conclusion, really what we want customers to know, we want customers to know that we have CPS Energy have an obligation to be transparent. We've been transparent over the last several years. We want to continue to build on that credibility. What can the customers do? I just outlined those. They can remain engaged either through our social media presence, cpsenergy.com, all of our website presence, and observe this outlining of the business case in real time through the live streaming. What can the CAC do to help? Again, be an advocate, be challenging, and provide feedback so that we can effectively roll this out. So, any questions or anything I can provide clarity on?
Guillermo, let me try one more time.
Sure.
Okay, I understand the various components you had up there in terms of risk, can't call it. What about in your plan? You said you have the revenue requirements and then the revenue forecast.
Mm-hmm.
Still working the numbers, I get it. Where do you see the biggest uncertainty, if you will, in those two sides of that equation?
Again, it's very much.
No dessert till you answer.
Well, I do love dessert. So let me focus on a particular area. I guess it depends on who in the company you're asking about. But for instance, as you're monitoring the revenue requirements, what's going to happen with inflation? Inflation is big. It has wide range of impacts. It impacts what it costs for us to buy something, contracts. It also has wide range impacts on interest rates, the cost to borrow, the cost to our customers. How does that play into the effect of affordability? So that right there is an example of why you can't really choose one particular risk. They're all kind of interrelated that you have to manage kind of in a wide lens to kind of answer those questions. But from my perspective, there's several things that we're monitoring, inflation being one of them, digital technology, with the systems that we're using and where we want to get to. You heard Rudy talking about, well, we want to get to the future of CPS Energy alongside with the generation planning. But we're just trying to make sure we've squeezed out the everything we had out of the system that we got. So before we take that leap, we want to just get up to par. So,
Geronimo, if I could go back to the last slide. You listed there, what can the CAC do to help? And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, what you'd like to see us do. Obviously we want to be a good ombudsman between the community and the ratepayers and CPS. But this is going to be a bit of a tough conversation because of inflation. Unfortunately, had we been able to do this, in the 2 years ago environment when inflation wasn't a big issue, would have been easier. But what things would you think specifically the CAC members could do to be helpful?
I would take the perspective of this is a 10-year journey. Like we mentioned, inflation may be here, it wasn't here 2 years ago, it is here now, but this is a 10-year journey. So couch it that way, think of it that way, not necessarily what we're doing now, but what do we need to accomplish over this next decade of spending, to make the best decision possible for CPS Energy. So I think that would be one, is kind of looking at it from that lens, not only a wide lens from a risk perspective, but a long lens from a investment perspective. And then as you're communicating with your constituents or the people in your circle of influence, gathering feedback and providing that back to Rudy, to Yvonne, myself, others of this group, really does help, because as we're trying to land the plane on where we want to go with this particular rate exercise, that feedback definitely helps, whether it's resonating. I can already tell that the questions y'all asked Rudy on generation are going to be extremely valuable. I think your expertise in your particular industries and your past also help us refine that package. And so I would say continue to do that.
Anybody else have some questions?
Yeah, I got one more. I was kind of following along the lines of Tom. When I saw that slide, I was thinking, oh no, I've been through this before. I'm assuming that you have a risk and threat model and you've had a plan or have gone through this, because it's multiple iterations to get that done correctly. And we had to go through this, Tom, we spent weeks on putting a risk mitigation plan together. And I'm kind of like you. I mean, cybersecurity, interest rate, capital, external events, whatever that might be, that's going to affect your revenue and your plan. So I'm assuming that CPS is looking at that, or maybe has a plan of some sort, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I can assure you we have a dedicated risk team, right? So that's a bar. We have a dedicated risk team. We also have governance over our finance and our risk that keep us up to date. We have external resources that we can tap out to that give us information as well. So, and that's kind of why we have such a wide lens and the ability to look at all of these in sequence. Now, again, it's not a very static view. Things change. And so as long as that input is coming in, which I have confidence that it is throughout the company, our not only our financial plan, but Vision 2027 will adjust and adapt to meet that.
Really need to do that, or we haven't.
Yes, sir.
Guillermo, from a budget perspective, right? Just from a budget perspective, integrating all those technologies and market uncertainties and all, integrating that all together, which side of that very simple equation do you see the most uncertainty in terms of your ability to correctly forecast your costs or your revenue?
I think cost is easy. Costs are going up, and they're going to continue to go up. Now, what makes up the building blocks of those cost increases? Right now, it's inflation. In the future, it's going to be generation planning. The revenue side is what this exercise is trying to stabilize. Is trying to make sure that the revenue through a rate request can be counted on, to kind of offset the increase in cost. But we've seen costs increase, every year. So I think that's more certain now, at least, compared to where we were at the last rate case, we were just going into the RFP process for our new solution for our ERP. We've got a lot more handled in that regard now. I think you talked to Rudy about it. Our generation plan, it's more of a, hey, we've got some ideas of what levers we'd pull, but he mentioned the large gas, combined cycle plant. We don't necessarily want to pull that lever until we absolutely have to. So from that perspective, we are accounting for those costs. When we'd finalize them and firm them up into our plan is the question. But when you're compared on revenue forecasting and cost is always going to go up, and so we're much more attuned with that, which is why we're trying to balance out the equation on the revenue side, and we'll have to continue to do that as we come back every couple of years for a rate request.
Geronimo, one final question from me. I had a conversation with a lady in the neighborhood, about 3 or 4 days ago, trying to explain in some simple terms, that this business is so complex, so tremendously complex, and I've certainly come to appreciate that after my time here on the CAC. But for the average resident, there's no way you can cull that down or get that down to a very complex, take a complex concept and get it down to a real concise explanation. I'm going to be on the impact thing tomorrow, so I'm hoping that that process can help us get to a simplified explanation that will resonate with the community. But I think it's going to be really hard to do. That's just my observation about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best selling point is what Rudy said. He's like, my job is to keep the lights on, and to make it affordable. And then he also said, San Antonio is the most affordable right now. And even with the rate case, we're still pretty high up there. And so, and also, and this is getting a little bit more geeky, but we're very capital intensive. I mean, you think about the bucket trucks and the poles and everything you got to dig under the ground, very complicated business. But the fact that when it boils it down to is, are we keeping the lights on, and are we doing it in an effective and affordable manner? I think Rudy mentioned 2 very good points, is that yes, we're keeping the lights on, and we're doing it, cheaper than anyone else in the state.
I just have one more question. There was a third-party audit done last year, and was wondering where I could get access to the report so I could forward it to anybody that's interested in overlooking some of those operational costs that are increasing.
Okay, so I think it's online, but I'll defer to Yvonne on this one.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Geronimo. We appreciate that.
Nancy, did we have any questions on the chat? Just want to double check before we move on. Well, I definitely appreciate the applause from the audience because I was going to take a moment to do exactly that and to say thank you to Geronimo, Chad, Corey, and all of your team members that contributed to this presentation, last month's presentation, and going forward. We really appreciate the time and effort, that you put into making sure that this information is comprehensive and clear and answering everyone's questions. So thank you all very, very much. All right. I tell you what, Chair Kelly, we're looking pretty good on time. So I'm just going to make a very brief staff update, and a lot of it, and some of it piggybacks on what you've already heard from Rudy and from Geronimo. But Rudy and Geronimo mentioned, that community input working group, that it starts, tomorrow, from 5 to 7. Folks can, anyone who's interested can come to our headquarters and sit, in person in the meeting or watch it as it's live streamed. Public input will be also part of the agenda towards the conclusion of the meeting. The first topic for this session will be where staff provides a historical perspective on previously approved rate increases and the necessity for continued support. So kind of a where have we been and where we're at now component. And then I anticipate that the second topic for the group will be a briefing on our most recent cost of service study and our current revenue requirements. So again, starting with where we've been, where we're at, where we're trying to go, and what it'll take to get there. So it's going to be, a very methodical journey, I think, to help, that committee, put their input and feedback together to get back to the board. Also, I wanted to mention that I neglected to mention to the broader committee last month. And, I had mentioned it to the executive committee as we were preparing for the September meeting, but I unfortunately neglected to mention to the entire committee. Julia Haynes, who was our manager of local government relations, she moved on back in August to Goodwill Industries. That she's the chief of staff for their president and CEO. Of course, we were able to, celebrate her, new journey and take her out for a nice lunch and wish her well in her new journey. But that's why you haven't seen her for the past 2 meetings. I do neglect for, again, not mentioning that to the broader committee after doing so with the executive committee. And also just wanted to mention that Velma Corona, as you know, Velma is always very involved and helpful and works very hard to make sure that these meetings, go off without a hitch. Unfortunately, Velma's mom passed away over the weekend. And so, just please keep her and her family, in your thoughts. And then we thank her, just very much for all of her, commitment, dedication, during such a difficult time. I think that is everything from me, sir. So you can now proceed to committee roundtable.
All right. Well, for once, we have plenty of time. I can't remember a meeting where we really had as much time as we expected or wanted to have for discussion. So I really would like to encourage everybody to be thinking about topics for upcoming meetings. I think that's an important thing that we need to be sure that we're getting the sorts of information that's helpful to us as we visit with folks that we come in contact with or our city council person or whatever. So I think it's important that we do that, and would like to have things, presentations made that are interesting. I just reiterate that in my opinion, I've been very, very impressed with the quality of the folks that have presented to us in the past. I think I'm really very encouraged by the quality of the folks that manage CPS Energy. I think they're doing a great job. So that's always good to know. Sometimes government entities, governmental or quasi-governmental entities get kind of a black eye for the quality of their management sometimes, but I don't think in this case there's any question that we've got good folks. So that's a good thing. So let me throw it open, see if anybody would like to start off with some topics that they'd like to discuss today.
In light of the announcement that Yvonne made about Velma, could I propose that we as a CAC together a card and some flowers. I'll pitch in for it to send to her and her family. I don't know if that's a formal thing or just we'll do it off the cuff. What do you think, John?
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, Tom. You're always very thoughtful. So yes, that'd be a great idea.
So we talked about the executive committee. That's the chairman, the vice chair, chairperson, sorry, vice chair, chair-elect, and then the old outgoing past chair who's still hanging on for some reason. At the last meeting where we talked about, you know what I'm talking about. We made the week before these meetings to set the agenda. And in that meeting, I asked if there was an update on the hold that the board asked us to put on moving people off the committee. And there wasn't. So I guess I'm asking, would it be appropriate for us to ask somebody from the board to come talk to us about what their plans or their vision are for this committee? Because they are talking about making changes or at least looking at the structure and maybe giving us an update. Or is it incumbent on us to go to the board and ask that?
I have an answer for you there. So I am anticipating that you will be receiving the committee will be receiving a follow-up briefing on that topic at the November board committee meeting. Yeah.
November?
Thank you.
Yeah, this is October meeting, so the November meeting. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I would encourage all of the committee members to be involved in this, to watch over this, because we should have some input into the structure and the setup of this committee. We have been operating for years as an independent committee, and I've always been in favor of that. I've always been a strong advocate of this committee being independent of and not beholden to the board, the staff, the council. We're our own committee. And so I'm always going to be in favor of that.
That's a good point, Bill. Maybe that's a good springboard for discussion here. Just for logistical reasons, I'm sure they're going to have to keep the group that makes these decisions smaller, but I'm very much encouraging all of the committee members to bring to my attention any suggestions you have of things that you think that the CAC could be restructured in a way to be more effective. I'll be the first to admit I probably don't get out and see as many people as, say, for instance, Tom does. Tom knows everybody. So, which is great. I mean, you know, some people, some of you are still in the working world and you're out and visiting with a lot of folks. Some of us maybe retired or not as active in the community. So the way that we interact with the citizens, I think it's important for us to maybe look at ways that we could be a little more robust with that. I do like Bill's comment about independence. I think we want to be able to be an independent. There was a discussion at our last meeting. I think it might have been Richard. If that's not the right person, I apologize, but I think Richard had brought up the idea of having an ombudsman. Yvonne, do you remember? Was that Richard?
Yeah, it was Richard. He talked about the Austin.
Yeah, the Austin Energy
Yeah,
model. And
Yes, he made reference to the consumer advocate that apparently the city of Austin has had in the past. So he made a reference to that.
Yeah. So, you know, it's something to think about. My personal, and this is just my personal reaction to that, is that I think that sort of is what the CAC's role is to me. I don't know that we need another single individual to try to address that. It seems to me that the CAC's role, if we're doing what we need to do, is acting as an interface between the community and CPS Energy. Seems like we would be the sort of impartial, hopefully impartial person or group of people that could address those type concerns that might come up, but obviously open to discussion. And there's certainly, other ways to look at it. So I'd entertain any comments or thoughts anybody has along those lines.
Yeah, Chair John, I'm still not real clear what the mission or vision of this ad hoc committee is, and maybe that's not defined yet. I don't know. But I think our mission and vision is pretty clear. And if that's going to change, I think, like what Bill was saying, we probably should know that You know, what problem are we going to solve, or what problem are they going to solve to help us in our direction as well? I really find it hard to present any comments on that because I really don't know what they're looking at or what they're trying to accomplish, if you know what I'm saying.
I think that's a valid point, Bob. I think, Yvonne, if we do have someone that can come next month and give us an update on the thinking, I'm a little bit at a loss at this point too, as to what the thinking is on the board as to what they would like to see done. But I think we probably all of us have some ideas or suggestions of ways that we might be more effective in our assignment as being the interface. So if y'all have some thoughts and ideas about how we might suggest from our perspective ways that we think we could be more effective, I think that'd be helpful.
And the Community Input Working Group, their mission, their purpose is solely to offer feedback to CPS Energy management on matters pertaining to a rate request. Solely that. So that, so that purpose and that intention, is separate from the future direction of, where the future state of the CAC. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of confusing because we've got kind of a lot of moving parts happening at the same time. But yes, the committee that would be looking at any changes or modifications to the CAC, that's a different assignment, different folks.
That's correct.
John, one thought to Bob's concern and to kind of what Bill was saying. I think if we wait for what's her name, Shannon, to come back to us, my sense is things are going to be baked. Things are going to be pretty solid at that point, right? She's not going to come back to us with kind of give me your loose, touchy-feely kind of thoughts, right? So if we're really serious about those concerns, right, my kind of perspective is let's be proactive and get them our concerns, our thoughts that Bill just expressed or whatever else there is, right? Because I don't know how else we can bake it into what she produces other than being proactive.
Yeah, that's a good comment, Tom. Yvonne?
Chair Kelly, Diana has her hand up.
Yes, my intention when I brought this up at the first time, oh, and by the way, thank you for giving me sending us the terms of office, is I think the city of San Antonio and its surrounding community would be way better served if the at-large positions after the 2029 term ends for Aaron, I believe he's the most recent one, were filled by community members for the little suburbs and the little towns around that CPS also serves. It kind of seems redundant to have like a District 3 rep, which is I am, and another at large from District 3. It doesn't seem like it seems like it's defeating the purpose of the community as a whole. So I've always suggested that the at-large committee members be from the other little towns like Alamo Heights or in Live Oak, Lone, whatever the case may be. And I really would like that to be a consideration that whoever is going to decide on the future of CAC consider that to begin with. Like I said, it just seems redundant to have members that are from the same district when we could easily have had, like we had Mary Day, who was Mary was so wonderful. So I would like for that to be a consideration to whoever is going to decide the future of CAC.
I think that's a good comment, Diana. I also would advocate for that. One thought, and I know that our current membership and the duration of those members' terms is pretty far out there in most cases. One option, I wouldn't advocate for making the CAC a lot bigger. I think 15, maybe 17 or 18 is about the biggest you'd want to go, just for having a nimble enough organization that you could really operate with. So I wouldn't suggest a whole increase in the wholesale increase. myself, but we could add maybe 2 or 3 positions and make those initially folks from a more geographically dispersed area around the community.
So if I could, excuse me, as an at-large member, I've often thought, and I'm POLOTUS, right? So I can hit those outlines.
Definitely.
But I've often thought, with our existing at-large members, would it make sense to divide up communities? I mean, we don't necessarily have to live there to be able to reach out to them, but I don't want to duplicate efforts either. So if we even just took a list of the supported communities that are not in a district and divided up amongst the at-large members, at least until we maybe put something more firm in place like Diana's suggesting.
Oh, that's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah, I like that as well. I think that's a good idea too. All right,
John.
Steve.
Going back to what I guess Bob brought up and that Tom addressed a while ago about how we can get input to the board on the future of this committee. I would suggest I'm a little understanding and kind of where Bob is coming from is that I think we really need to have an understanding of what the board is looking for in this committee, in this restructuring of the committee, so that we can be more focused and direct on our input. I would rather not just come up with my idea of what this board should be without understanding the parameters that we're working within what the board's goals are. And I kind of thought when Shannon last talked to us that we would get that we'd get at least some, maybe some bullet points that the board is looking at that we could address as soon as possible to get our input into that. So I think that would be more valuable to kind of take that approach. If we get some general idea of why and where and how this committee, how the board wants this committee to go. So we can address that.
Well, I think that's a good point, Steve. Yvonne, I guess Tom, I think, brought up a good point about the possibility that things might get all baked in before we have a chance to really provide our input. I would hope that wouldn't be the case. I didn't get the sense from Shanna last time that was the way things were going. But I guess if we do get a chance to visit with her next month, I would certainly like to ask that they remain open-minded and open to our input, since, those of us that have served on here for several years have some thoughts that might be valuable. So I think it would be good, but also we need to know what's the board looking for too. So we really need both. We need input from both directions, I think, to get the best result.
But John, Bill, I think you missed what they call it, the B session or our closed door executive committee. Shannon gave us a little bit of a peek into that process, but one of the peaks was schedule. Is that she wants to, if I remember right, it was a February, March objective to go to the trustees. So you back that up, right? And she's got to have various things. And if we're going to wait till November to kind of hear back from her, right? That means that she's got just a month to turn around that draft and all that she has to do based on her input. And my concern is that we should, if we get a review with her in November, we should have our thoughts baked, our thoughts consolidated to say, Shannon, here's where we think we should go. And there can be difference of opinion in that. That's cool. But my sense is that we're very close to being too late already, right? Even though it sounds off in the distance, these things move very slowly and they have their monthly cycles, right? Because trustees meet once a month, we meet once a month, that kind of thing.
Well, and you've got the holidays right in the middle of all that. And
Tom, I guess my point I was trying to make is it would be nice, if we're going to discuss this at the November meeting, it would be really good if we could get something at least a week or so ahead of time, some bullet points, thought processes coming from the board that we could think about and be prepared for the November meeting to make the most of that opportunity.
Well, that's a good idea, Steve. Is that something you could do, Yvonne? Could we visit with Shannon and just see if she could give us, and it wouldn't have to be, at this point, I'm going to be optimistic and think right now that everything's kind of evolving and still in flux. So, but if she could just give us maybe some things that they would like to see that they think would work better, at least that would give us some idea, as Steve said, about what we should be discussing so that we can all get to the same place a little quicker, maybe.
Crisp up Steve's ask, right? Just want to be clear. There's at least 3 stakeholders that I can think of, right? And again, respect to what Bill said in terms of independence, but there are 3 stakeholders that define, you know, what we do and why we exist, right? 1 is the city council, 2 is staff, and 3 is the citizens, right? The community, right? And so 2 of those we can get our arms around, I think, or Shannon hopefully has her arms around. The community thing, I think that's where we got to come in and play our card. But staff, I'm sorry, the 4, pardon me, staff, city council, trustees, and citizens, right? The 3 that Shannon should hopefully get her arms around in terms of at least having discussions with them to say, what do you guys want this committee to do? So, you know, I think the reformulation of the committee isn't so much about whether we add ad hoc or more people or all that stuff. It's more about what's our mission, what's our purpose, right? What is each of those constituents expecting from us, including citizens, right?
Yes, and to go back to my point, and who decides what, right? So of those 4 constituencies, the only one that has any direct impact on the formulation of the membership of this committee is the city council through its appointments of each of the individual district members. And the city council members, yes, of the 15, 10 of those are appointed by the council members, and the council members can appoint or withdraw those members at their discretion. The board can't do that, and the city council can't do that, and the community, of course, can't do that. And it can't do that. Nobody can do that with the at-large members. This committee chooses the at-large members. That's a thing that gives this committee the independence that it has, is nobody can directly influence who sits on this committee. The board of directors of CPS Energy decided back when this committee was formulated how it would be formulated and wrote the original bylaws and things like that. This committee now has control of the bylaws. So as an entity, this committee really is independent.
I don't think so. You don't think that's what Shannon's doing right now, writing our bylaws.
Well, we need to have input into that process, and that's what I'm asking of the committee.
If I remember correctly, Shanahan indicated that, you know, it would be good to provide a straw man, you know, of the bylaws, you know, for the committee's review. If I'm not mistaken, that's what she did say at the last meeting. You know, I'm happy to send a copy of the existing bylaws as a reminder to everyone of where we're at right now to the committee. And I do want to hit pause for just a second and give Lawson an opportunity to speak, because she's had her hand up for a bit.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Thank you. I agree. I think that there's a lot of different moving parts that we are looking at, and, you know, arguably proactively, right? We're looking at our at-large positions. We're looking at, you know, terming out positions and even moving of different districts as you know, I have moved while being on this committee. I know that throughout my term being on this committee, the bylaws and the structure and the purpose and intent of the CAC has continued to be a evolution of a discussion. We've continued to have this discussion. I do support what Bill's saying, because we have always advocated for being independent of CPS Energy or independent of city council, we are an extension of both of these organizations because we were appointed to a seat and we work directly with CPS Energy. We still should remain that independence and have the take the steering wheel on what these bylaws look like. And I know that discussion kind of seems to keep moving off into the back burner for us, and we do need to get ahead of that. I think too, I am going to advocate that we have just a little bit more of transparency of what the goal is for the future of CAC. Obviously with, the changes that were made with RAC, and wondering whether, and we've had this question in this committee as well of are we still of value for CPS Energy, and how do we maintain our value for CPS Energy? I want to ensure that that's always at the top of the discussion so we don't lose that point, because I think that this team and the committee in particular has a lot of value that they bring to the discussions, and a lot of value that they bring to CPS Energy when it comes to advising what we're hearing from the community, as well as what you guys are telling us to advocate for as well. So I think that there are some key discussions that need to be had, and we do need to have a discussion to structure these bylaws to ensure that we continue to be a vital piece to CPS Energy and to the community.
Yvonne, I have a question. I don't think we asked this, but is there a particular member on the board that's leading this interaction, or is it just the whole board together?
My understanding is it would be just the board in general, correct? Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't know. I think one of the board members sort of was the main contact for the rate advisory committee, if I remember correctly. So I didn't know if.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just didn't know if they followed that precedent with this process or not.
No.
So. Okay.
Well, there was discussion about a board member wanting to be a point person for us, but I don't believe there was a follow through on that, correct?
I'll check my notes on that. This doesn't sound familiar.
There was a board member who asked if this committee would want a liaison from the board to come to our meetings.
I believe we said yes to that, didn't we?
No,
We
that was
said
Dr.
no.
Romero. That was
Okay.
Dr. Romero.
We declined that.
Okay. Well, maybe now considering everything, maybe that, and especially if they're going to have discussions on what we're going to look like, maybe they should have an ear in. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm all for us being in their ear. That's why I asked, is it incumbent on us to go to them and tell them what we think and have a plan? Or do we wait, as Steve said, and, want to know what they're thinking first and then react to that? It's something that we as a committee probably should talk about.
My opinion is that we don't become a lame duck and we take initiative and are proactive on what we're going to look like.
Yeah, I think I would agree. That's why I wanted to kind of kick this issue around today, because I think all of us that have been on the committee for a while probably have some ideas or thoughts about how we might be restructured or modified. I don't see us throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if you will, but I think that there may be some tweaks that could make us more effective. I just would like everybody to have a chance to have some input. So.
John, I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
that we form 4-ish people for a little ad hoc committee between now and our next meeting to both kind of press on in a positive way, but press on CPS to get us that input, right? And be proactive to go after and get it with Yvonne's help, and then meet and come up with a straw man, such that we're meeting next meeting in November, right? With something, right? Versus if we wait till November and we expect to sit around this table and create something, not going to happen. So if we don't act on this motion, I'm sorry, I just don't see a way we're going to give input.
Okay, so I'll entertain any additional discussion on Tom's motion at this point.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I'm not sure we can actually have a motion in a second since this is not on the agenda. Right. But under the bylaws, the chair has the ability to name ad hoc committees. So we can, as a committee, ask the chair without a motion and second vote, say, Chairman, would you consider formulating an ad hoc group as Tom described it? Appoint those people.
What Bill said.
Okay, well, I think I'd still like to hear a little discussion from the rest of the members. Do y'all think that's a good idea? If so, we can pick, I don't know, Tom, what do you think? 3 people? We don't want to get too big of a group, so it's unwieldy. But maybe 3 folks.
You're not interest, right? Or will
Yeah, right. And availability. A lot of people are pretty busy, so, yeah, okay.
I would assume similar to what we did for when we talked about whether or not these meetings would be recorded. We had a small group that discussed the framework and brought it to the larger group. Is Tom, is that what you're thinking as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Listen, that's perfect. Exactly what I was thinking.
All right, so Tom would be a member, since he's doing that. Who else would like to participate? We'll have, I think we'll pick 2 other folks besides Tom and have a little small group to get together. Who else would like to volunteer?
I'd like to be on the ad hoc.
Okay, all right, so that's Lawson. So we have one more person that we could add. Any takers? Anybody interested?
I'll volunteer.
I'm sorry, who is that? Oh, Diana.
Diana, yeah.
Okay, that sounds
That's
good.
perfect. I was just going to recommend that somebody that's been on the board or on the CAC for a while be included. Not
Okay,
that Tom and Lawson don't have a lot of input, but they're newer.
right.
So if Diana's on it, that's perfect.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Andra. Okay, so Diana, Lawson, and Tom, we'll look at you all 3 to get together and, I don't know, meet at least online or something a couple of times and figure out what we want to do then. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so that'll be our ad hoc committee. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we've talked about that issue quite a bit. Does anybody else have any other issues they'd like to bring up? Bob?
It's not an issue. I just heard some snippets of information. I don't know if the real context here, but that ERCOT is looking at some rule changes to industrial consumers, I think, something about, is that right? I don't know what the details are about that. I was just curious if there's anybody. Oh, you got, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe that's something that as it progresses, we get more information on.
Yeah, I wish we'd have had just another minute or 2 with Rudy, because I was wanting to ask him about, he mentioned the large data centers, which, that's one thing. But then you've got these mining, cryptocurrency mining things that are much more energy intensive, which I hope we never have within CPS Energy's boundaries, but I don't know to what extent we have any control over that. But this new proposal that's out there, and I guess, Steve, hadn't read all of it yet, but was it a proposal from the legislature? ERCOT. Oh, that's right. So it'd just be the ERCOT board. I don't know. I kind of wonder if it's constitutional. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. The PUC, I guess the ERCOT would come up with the idea, then the PUC would have to approve it, I guess. And I guess at that point it would be,
Yeah, PUC, I'd imagine, right?
I'm sorry.
I'm sure it probably would have to go to the PUC, right?
Yeah, I think after ERCOT came up with a rule, then I think PUC would have to approve it to make it legal, I think. But even at that, it may be challenged in court. I guess the article that you gave us, Steve, said that some major industrial groups were already lobbying the governor to kill it. So we know how that works in Texas.
Right, yeah.
Just for the folks who may not have heard about this, the ERCOT is proposing regulation that would require any large electric consumers to get ERCOT's approval before they're able to connect to the grid.
Sounds rational.
So that's the exact proposal. And it's like John said, there's been some opposition, but there's the the Texas Blockchain Council, which is a pro-crypto organization, said that they mostly support the regulation. I'm not sure. I'm surprised to see that, but, and there's been no comment by the governor's office, but I can guess how the governor would feel about that. He'd
It'll
feel like
depend
that
on
would
who
be an
donates the most.
anti-business proposition.
Yeah.
But I think from our standpoint, from all the things that we've talked about, this is a huge impact on electricity demand, and typically a large commercial development or industrial development brings with it, a lot of positives, which are employment and et cetera, a lot of positive impacts on the local economy. These crypto mining operations don't really bring a lot of employment, and they take a sizable chunk of our electricity demand. So I feel like this is possibly a move in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something they ought to consider. I think, y'all help me out here, but I think a data center, number one, doesn't draw as much power as these crypto miner things. But I think the data centers, though, do need to be up and running all the time. They can't shut down.
Yeah, we're back up.
And so they've got that, whereas the crypto miners take a lot more power, but they can shut down. But then, like what happened this summer, just last month, then they get paid an enormous ransom, I call it, for being willing to shut down. So I don't know, I'm pretty anti-crypto mines. I think they're ridiculous, but that's just me. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if there's a whole lot that any of us can do about it, but I think it's important for us to be aware of what's going on in the power industry, and this is an issue that's out there. So something we can keep an eye on. I think that Pablo Vegas, the new head of ERCOT, I think he's coming with some new ideas, and maybe he's hopefully not quite as fettered by old rules and relationships. Maybe he can think out of the box better.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else got any other topics we want to kick around? We've still got a few minutes. We're all looking at each other. Okay.
One other, I guess, general comment I have, John, about just communication. I think Rudy made a comment about, he made a comment at some event that we may be looking for a rough winter, or we could, worst case scenario. And of course, the next day it was headlines in the Express News that we're going to have a problem this winter. And I think particularly going through what you are going through with the looking at the rate increase and approval. I'm seeing a lot more information a lot more in the Express News about these issues. And sometimes it's not all correct or accurate. And so the focus has to be, why are we doing this? Why do we need this rate increase? And what's it going to be used for? It's got to be very simple to the public, because the Express News is going to bring up the idea of we've got all of these ratepayers who haven't paid their electric bill from 2 or 3 years ago. And so we still got this huge debt out there. We need to answer the question, are we raising the rates to cover all these folks so we can write off those debts? It's specific items that we need to be very clear to the public why we're asking for this rate increase and what it's going to be used for. And not let Express News, as best we can, distort what the real issues are here.
Yeah. I think it's a good point, Steve. Yeah, as I told Geronimo, I think that the whole issue, the context of the rate increase is so complicated and so complex. When I was talking to my neighbor a few days ago, I was just thinking, how can I simplify this enough? Not that this lady's I'm not saying she's dumb or anything. She's just not familiar with all the complexities that go into the power market. And, you know, none of us were until we got on the committee and understood things. So it's just really hard to cull this down into a little nutshell, you know. Try to get it down to one of Ross Perot's whiteboards or something. Y'all don't remember that, but, you know, just trying to simplify things down to that.
I can share some information that would be really helpful.
Okay.
You know, very clear and concise one-pager type stuff that's located on our webpage. Be happy to send that along with the bylaws and the presentation from today.
Okay, thanks, Yvonne. Okay, well, I have one other final thought for today. I'm glad to see we have more folks back in person, but I would really hope and encourage everybody that possibly can to come and join with us in person. It just makes things, I think, a little better. We have an opportunity to develop and grow our personal relationships, which makes things helpful. And you know, it's amazing how many little sidebar discussions you can have sitting here getting ready to eat lunch or whatever, or afterwards. The sidebar discussions can sometimes ferret out some really useful information. So it's just easier to do that in person than it is trying to do that on the WebEx or Zoom or whatever this is. So anyway, just encourage people, the members, as much as you can. Let's try to all, for the winter time, fall and winter time period, let's all try to get together and come here in person as much as you can. We'd appreciate that. So, Yvonne, I think I'm out of ideas and thoughts. So unless anybody else has something to offer to the group, I'd say we're pretty much done.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. All in favor? Aye.